That was it, I thought as the bars locked in around me. I have nothing else to live for, so I might as well just perish in this prison. I realized that stupid temptation is costing me for sure. I didn't mean to kill that nice man, but I could not fight his evil temptations. It was like the devil conversing with me, testing my morality. I shouldn't have stumbled into that bar, I thought. He closed in on me and spoke with a voice so distant from my own. I told him I had a wife and a daughter, but that didn't stop tempting me. I shouldn't have left with him, but his temptations fascinated me. As he advanced me in his locked house with a devilish smirk, I couldn't help but snatch the newly sharpened knife on the counter that he used to slice up a lime for the margaritas. He didn't notice me gently pick up the knife, and as he came in for a hug, the voice inside my head told me to stab him and kill the devil. So I did. Now, here I am inside this prison. My cell was cold and dark and reminded me of a haunted house. The floors were hard, and if I took my thin socks off for even a moment and touched my feet to the ground, it felt like I was walking on ice, especially this time of year. Mid-November, the cold started slowly creeping in. As I look around my cell, there are no windows. The walls are plain white and felt as if they are closing in on me. To the right is one thin, spring metal bed with a paper-thin blanket and a rock as a pillow on top. To the left is what the prison's guards called a toilet. We call it a hole in the ground, with a spigot next to it that only ran freezing cold water. When I turn to look out of my cell, my vision becomes blocked by the cold metal bars locking me away from the colorfulness of society that I'm allegedly a threat to. These bars cannot be broken, bent, or opened by me, but yet they control me, and I can't leave. I'm trapped in this cold, pale, quiet room. On this particular day, Thanksgiving, November 21st, 2002, it started as any other day would. The lights turn on and blind my eyes. The horn blows and pierces my ears. It's just another day in prison, but today would be different for me. Everyone else continued with their day-to-day ritual of getting out of their cardboard-like beds and dressing themselves in their bland orange uniforms. The arthritis in my hands made it hard for me to move as fast as everyone else. By the time everyone had cleared out of their cells, I hadn't even gotten my pants pulled up. I received no help. I stood out among the other prisoners. I was an 86-year-old man who stood 6 feet and 10 inches tall, with gray hair sprouting in random spots over my freckle-ridden head. And when I walked, I did so with a slight limp and my fingers curled. Now, finally fully clothed and ready for another day, I rejoiced that today was finally Thanksgiving, and tonight my only daughter was getting married. My designated guard entered my cell at approximately 6:07 a.m. that morning, cuffed me up, and said I was coming with him. I started walking with my uneven limp down the long, narrow, damp, and dark corridor with my cold, arthritis-ridden hands restrained together behind my hunched-over back and newly polished handcuffs. There were no sounds. Everyone was in the mess hall eating their daily breakfast slop. With each step we took, we got closer and closer to this unknown destination. Christopher, the guard, was dragging me to. I did not care where they were taking me. In fact, I was almost oblivious to the slow moving of my legs. All I had been thinking about was my plan. Every waking hour, I was thinking of ways to make my escape better. I promised my only child, my daughter, I would walk her down the aisle and give her away on her wedding day. That day just so happened to be today. I kept my head down as I walked, paranoid the guards would somehow read my mind by looking at me and lock me up in solitary confinement. Today was not the day for that. Christopher snapped me out of my thoughts, saying, "Samuel, it is time for your random drug test." Once a month, I get randomly tested for drugs because of my drug addiction. They say that's why I'm in here, but I know that murdering an innocent man is what got me in here. I approached the lady in the black pantsuit with her hair in a tight bun and wearing glasses that looked like they were from the 70s. She always administered my drug tests and made me quite happy to see her, especially today. "Here's your cup, Samuel. You know the drill. I have to watch you pee now." She followed me to the toilet, and this toilet was actually a toilet. Sometimes it was hard for me to get myself to pee on demand, especially with such a pretty lady watching me. But today was going to be a good day, so I was not about to let this drug test stop me. After Christopher returned me to my cell, the day proceeded like any other. I carried my clothes to the community showers, washed my old, wrinkly body, as I saw others who still had their youth left in them. I began to get sad. The yearning for a hit came back. I let it fade away. It was now 11 a.m., clean and ready for the day. I started walking to the mess hall for lunch. Today we got a piece of bread, corn, and a slice of roast beef for lunch. This pitiful meal heightened my excitement for the meal I would eat tonight at Sarah's wedding. For now, I sat alone, as usual. Nobody wanted to talk to the old man who killed a gay man. I didn't mind, though. It gave me the space I needed to perfect my plan. After I scraped my plate clean, I waited for the bell to ring, telling us to go back to our cells for inspection. Normally, I was not nervous for inspection, but today was not a normal day. The guards thought I was too old to pull off anything crazy, and in my 6 years residing here, they have only torn my room apart 9 times. The only reason I was never nervous before is because they could tear my room apart and not find anything. I am as innocent as can be, except for today. Under my mattress, I had the key to my escape plan. Literally. Last night, I laid in my bed trying to rack my brain for the final piece of my escape plan. Something I could pick a lock with. I needed something thicker than a paperclip because the hole for the key was a lot bigger than usual. I couldn't steal the fork, and I didn't even have a paperclip or bobby pin. I rolled over on my side and felt a slight bounce in my bed. A light bulb suddenly sparked in my old brain. The springs in my bed would work perfectly. Thinking of how to get a spring out without making too much noise at 3 o'clock a.m. was the hardest part. I ended up unclothing my bed as quietly as possible, knelt on the ground next to my bed, and examined the springs. I had to cut a piece out the size of my middle finger, so I used the sharpened toothbrush I had to cut it. It took about an hour for me to saw through the thick metal, but eventually I got a big enough piece and began constructing a key out of it. Once I had finished, I put it in a sock inside my pillowcase for hiding. The guards entered my cell, and I stood in the far left corner next to the sewage hole, watching as the guards threw my pillow across the room, and it landed right next to my feet. My heart sank. If they flipped over the mattress, they would notice the missing spring. Heart beating, palms sweating, I watched them pull my sheets down, feel around, and leave with no suspicions. Now it was time for my afternoon chores. My duty was to mop the east wing floors. The next 2 hours went by slower than ever, and I continually watched the clock tick as I mopped the floors in figure eights. Each tick a second closer to my escape, a second closer to my daughter. Once I finished mopping, and it was time, I limped to the storage closet where all the cleaning supplies were stored. That was where I would escape. I pulled out my spring key and pushed aside the heavy rolling cart of supplies to expose the old, dusty vent. There were 4 screws, one on the top, right side, left side, and bottom. I proceeded to get all 4 undone, and the uncovering came off. This is it, I thought. The vent was small and hot. Luckily, I was skinny enough to squeeze and squirm through. My lanky legs were the only thing that held me back. I had mapped out the plan of the vents in my mind and was hoping I was going the right way. I knew this had to lead outside eventually. After crawling for what seemed like an hour, I came to a T. There was a light shining from the right side, so I decided to shimmy that way. I could feel the vents closing in on me. I could tell that my company was not welcome inside of here, but I kept telling myself I would be out soon. Inching closer to the light, I slid my hand down the side to reach my spring key and reach the other side of the vent. I unscrewed the covering in a matter of minutes. I pushed the covering onto the ground and opened my eyes to see an office with a desk, 2 chairs, and a bookcase. Gosh darn it, where in the heck am I? I accidentally shouted out loud and immediately covered my mouth. I looked around. There were no windows, but no bars on the windows. That was it. I was almost there. I just had to get out those windows. Just as I was about to push myself out of the vent, I heard the doorknob wiggle. Someone was coming. I retreated into captivity inside the vent to hide from my perpetrators. Just as I got the covering over my dusty, sweaty face, the door opened, and in walked the warden. Patient 016 Samuel Hudgens never reported back from his chore duty this afternoon and is not in his room. I think he is having one of his days again. Today, when I went to take him to his drug test, he kept his hands behind his back as if he was handcuffed again. I heard them talking about me. They didn't know I was there, and they were acting like I was crazy, or not a prisoner or something. They tell me I'm just a patient here, but I know that I'm trapped here behind these bars. Therefore, that makes me a prisoner. The fury in my mind raced as they talked about me like I was some mental health patient. I wanted to burst out of the vent so bad, and the more my fury raged, the smaller the vent felt. I could tell I was about to freak out. Without even realizing my actions, I started banging my legs and arms against the vent. I couldn't control myself, and I immediately regretted it. But I could not contain the urge, and I continued to bang and bang until the warden and a guard had pulled the covering off the vent and yanked me out. I could not stop kicking and screaming. I was an 86-year-old man acting like an 8-year-old boy. I remember being stabbed with something, and the rest went blank. I woke up at 1:00 p.m. the next day. I had missed my daughter's wedding. I was in a white room with nothing but a mattress on the floor. The door had a small window, and under the door lay an envelope. My legs trembled as I stood up and walked to the door. I could barely bend over to pick up the envelope, and my fingers struggled to open it. It read, "Dear Dad, I'm sorry to inform you of this over a letter, but the wedding is off. I had a baby 5 months ago and decided to call the wedding off. I kept the baby a secret because I knew Mom would freak out and kick me out before my wedding day. I hope you get this letter in time and do not do something crazy to make it. I hope you're taking your meds and behaving yourself in there. Just be lucky you didn't go to jail and get capital punishment, right? At least you can meet your grandson someday, hopefully. I hope you're making progress. Love you, Sarah." Dated April 27th, 2001. It must have gotten lost in the mail, I thought. It was like I had Alzheimer's, and reading this letter made me remember for just a moment that I was not in jail. My cell was my room, the guards were my nurses, and the bars and the hole in the ground and the handcuffs were all a part of my frequent delusions. I had pleaded insanity in court and winded up in a mental hospital by luck. I laid back on the mattress, thinking of the extravagant scheme I had just concocted and how I had been planning that for over a year. For nothing. There was no wedding. I wasn't in jail. I couldn't escape. I couldn't even think straight. But reading this letter made me feel sane for once. To be back in touch with my daughter was like being back in touch with reality. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and just like that, I snapped out of reality and back into hiding. The guards were coming to get me.